Hey folks.
Oi, oi.
Hey
I
up.
started saying oi oi. I don't know why.
It is.
Fucking lads, mate. It's because I had to listen to fucking Ocean Colour Scene all week.
You slag. Welcome once again to another Sound is a Pound, where we're going to spend your hard-earned cash on some lovely, quote-unquote, lovely records. Thank you very much for your donations so far. We appreciate that.
Think you agree it's been well used on the likes of Crash Test Dummies and Ocean Colour Scene, Top Loader. Who else have we paid for to date?
Ash.
I believe we paid for Outcast, but we never got around to doing it.
Yeah, we do actually have Speaker Box Love Below, which I gave to you, Dave.
Yeah.
I have an Ed Sheeran album.
We can do that, another one.
I've got an Ed Sheeran album which I was not given, but as a present. But
which we're not given, so you bought it.
No,
you
gave it to me as a gift with another thing. It wasn't part of this, but we can definitely use it for this.
I think you find it was a bonus item.
And also, Chris, you have Highly Evolved by the Vines just sitting right here. I'm ready to give it.
And
to
we've
you.
got some more to
fucking
unwrap
stay
as
there.
well, so. Now, people might have been disappointed in that last Sound is a Pound, because even though there were some bad albums there was no anger. We actually quite liked some bad albums.
Because we're not just out to piss on people for the sake of it, right? It's one thing calling out Biffy Clyro for being a bunch of posing charlatans, right? But it's another thing to shit an Ocean Colour Scene just because they happen to be good at something that sucks.
So, Chris, what's your album this week?
I just wait to finish chewing the tumble pie.
Well played.
I have, presumably I've been typecast here. I've been given the album Razorblade Suitcase by the grunge band Bush.
For a change and I slip some boil away, swallowed, followed.
Who may well be, it transpires, the band that killed grunge. As Razorblade Suitcase, according to Wikipedia and in some quarters, is known as the last major grunge album of the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
Stone Dead.
Goodness.
Stone Dead.
Irony, self-awareness, everything folded in and collapsed on itself.
Even had Steve Albini producing it, which is fucking mental.
Alright, so I've got some spiel to get through here before I bring you guys in your comments, right? The first thing I want to point out is that I have got an ongoing beef with Benjamin Power of Blank Mass, who offhand said one day that Silverchair were less bad than Bush, which I took great exception to, because I think that Bush are far less bad than Silverchair. And it's since got into other people have been pulled into the fray. We've had sort of councils convened to adjudicate, and Ben has actually challenged us to have the argument on here with you two guys observing. So that may well happen.
We can have a Who Killed Grunge special.
Yeah, the Grunge Nadir mixtape. But that could be a thing that happens. Anyway, Bush are a band I'm very familiar with from a young age. 16 Stone came out in 1994 and I bought it in 1994.
So
I remember
10 million other people.
This was when Stirling used to have a bus station at the back of the Thistle Centre, and it had no marches station. It was so different. The town was about half the size it is now, and I remember standing at the bus stop gazing in wonderment at the back of this album cover, and it's this weird brown and white, not very interesting album cover as well. But yeah, so this was the follow-up. This came out in 1996. There were a lot of expectations in the band because they were like grunge pop wunderkind kind of, Gavin was a pin-up. And they went and got Steve Albini to record it. Steve Albini had sort of broken through into the mainstream with a couple of projects, especially In Utero by Nirvana, which came out in 94. Turns out, though, that Gavin Rossdale originally wanted Steve Albini to record 16 Stone, but they couldn't make it happen for whatever reason. By the way, did you know that Gavin Rossdale dated Courtney Love for 8 months?
Oh,
as
really?
if to reaffirm his grunge credentials. Yeah, like 95, 96.
Goodness.
So, Bush formed in 92, And apparently they originally sounded a lot like NXS. And I think when you consider how Gavin Rossdale looks, it kind of makes sense for them to rip off NXS more than it makes sense for them to rip off Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Stone Temple Pilots, whatever it was they were ripping off. Now, let's see, Mark, you had problems finding this, I believe, because if you go on Spotify, there was a reissue in 2016 that had 4 extra tracks, and currently on Spotify you can only listen to the 4 extra tracks and not the actual original album. I'm not entirely sure why that is, but one of the things that actually attracted some people to the reissue, or at least made the press pay some attention to it, was the fact that the liner notes contained a short essay by Steve Albini. I think this is worth just discussing in brief. I'm a big fan of Steve Albini. I really like him. In person, I really like him. I've met him a couple of times, but also just I like what he's got to say, even though he's a bit of a curmudgeon. I think he plays a valuable role in calling a lot of stuff out. In the liner notes to this, Steve Albini sort of surprised people by taking the side of the bush, because I think a lot of people thought it was just a fucking payday for him and he'd want to disown it. But his attitude was quite clear. He said, look, Bush wear their influences very, very, very much in their sleeves. They don't hide it. They're just quite happy to be, this is what we like, this is what we sound like. You know, they sound more typically American, maybe. Their influences are clearly American. But Albini compares them to the likes of Oasis and other bands that came around at the time. Probably Menswear's a good example. We've talked about them before.
Lighter, darker, brighter, consciousness begins to falter. Holding you, I start to wonder. Pull you out or drag you under. Breathe deeper, daydreamer.
Where like the press had already made them huge before they even had a record out. You know, they were already like buzzing. Oasis were the band of the year before their first album even landed, because of the hype that was kicking around at the time. He says that Bush weren't like that. He talks about Bush touring, especially in the States. A lot of the British bands, when they don't get the fame in America, he says they give up touring there, because the likes of Oasis, for example, couldn't handle the blow to the ego of going from playing these massive shows in the UK to playing pokey clubs. I mean, I remember when Biffy Clyro were pretty big here, they were playing at like 300-400 capacity venues over there, opening for bands that over here opened for them. And that reversal doesn't sit well with some egos. So, you know, Steve says, whatever you think of Bush, they worked really hard in the States. They did multiple tours of like little clubs. They worked their way up. They got into people's affections via the college radio route. They showed a bit of humility, and you know, and accordingly, because they sort of didn't pay their dues to the British sort of kingmaker press, the sort of gatekeeper systems that were in place that allowed bands to be accepted, those systems, Albini argues, rejected them. That's why Bush became such a laughingstock, were so picked upon. I'm going to call bullshit on Steve Albini on this one. Bush's first album sold fucking loads in the States. Bush formed in 92, the album came out in 94, and it went to number 4 in the charts. That doesn't happen to a band because they were touring little clubs. It just doesn't. If this was their 5th album, maybe you'd be like, well, those guys really worked their way up. I'm not sure why. I mean, maybe there's some truth to it to some extent. I'm sure they did smaller shows than perhaps other bands would have done. But let's be honest, Bush fucking landed big time, first time in the USA. They were not roughing it in squats and shit like that to like 30 people. They were doing that in the UK, which is why we never fucking saw them or heard from them. They maybe did this in reverse, but you know, I think that's a little bit of mythologizing around them on his part, and I don't know if that's a conscience balm, or I think he just really likes them. I think he's worked with them, and they're probably just quite nice guys. He just doesn't like seeing them get shat on by prima donnas, and there's probably something fair in that, but I don't think what he's suggesting here is entirely true. I also think, you know, he talks about why Bush were shunned and ridiculed. They're a pretty easy band to ridicule, let's be honest. I think they have some pretty good songs over the piece. I think sometimes their songwriting is quite interesting, but sonically they're a fucking joke. You know, they're so derivative.
Goodbye to my friends. Wish I could see you all again. Family hollow, family real. Wish you were here, see how I feel.
I mean, even the way they tried to get credibility by association, apart from Albini, they went to the extent of getting a guy called Von Oliver to do the art for this. That's the person that done the art for Surfer Rosa by the Pixies. I mean, they were clearly trying to be cool by association. This album is interesting because it shows them trying to make a play for being Nirvana as opposed to being Pearl Jam. they sort of straddled that for a while, and I think this was them very much trying to do the more obscure, cool thing. This album, by the way, Dave, we've quoted Johnny Cigarettes from the NME in the past. This album famously got 1 out of 10, which he said was solely for them managing to spell Bush right on the cover. I mean, that writer was pretty famous for being a prick, albeit quite funny at times. In hindsight, I mean, I had this at the time, obviously, and I remembered it being more angular than it actually is now. It's maybe just because my tastes have moved on, though. The lyrics are not good. Really not good. Gavin Rossdale tries really hard to be obtuse, and it just sounds try hard.
A personal holiday, 6 months linen. Safe to say we are alone. Suburban suicide, watching night commander.
I mean, to go through the songs a little bit. I think we'll forget the first one. Don't give a shit about it. Greedy Fly, the second one, I think it's not bad. It's one of the better songs in the album. The chorus in it's decent, and it's a little bit more atonal and weird. Swallowed is a fucking monstrosity. It's absolutely gack grunge pop at its most throat clogging peanut butter worst. That's fucking disgusting.
I remember hearing it on the radio when I was on holiday as a kid in Portugal. So I must have been like 12, 11. I'm going, oh, I really like that. And then I only heard it once and the hook got me. And then when I heard it again, I was like, oh, I don't think I like that. And then by the time I managed to get a copy of it on tape, I was like, actually, that's really quite a bad song.
You know, it reminds me of Creep by Radiohead.
Yeah, it's got that same vibe.
Horrible, stodgy, basic structure that at first you're like, oh wow, or like Zombie by the Cranberries or something like that. You're just like, oh god, that has no longevity. Insect Kin I think's interesting because it shows them trying to do radio friendly unit shifter, and at various points in this album they sort of seem to try and replicate certain songs off of In Utero. Absolutely. As well as all the other aspects. So that's kind of the most angular one on it, and it even includes this thing where they put the catchiest bit in the bridge, as opposed to the verse and chorus are all quite dissonant and weird, but then they've got this big drive-in middle section, and that's, you know, that was a brilliant moment in Radio Friendly Unit Shifter, and it seems that they've sort of aped it. Cold Contagious and Tendency to Start Fires aren't even worth talking about. Mouth isn't terrible until the chorus, and the chorus is fucking horrendous.
Your mouth.
It's the biggest cringe on the album, man. It makes my elbows hurt. When I cringe, my elbows hurt, and my elbows hurt so bad when I hear this song.
They remixed that and brought it out when they did. So they did a sort of like remix album, and that was the single off it. Straight No Chaser is cello and violin, and it seems like it's trying to do All Apologies a wee bit.
Falling down angels, raw pain, distress. It's all in the way we know that we could have it all.
History has the exact same drum tone as Scentless Apprentice. It tries to do that big open drum kit, keeping the guitar and bass out the road and sporadic.
Gave my love to 1,000 yesterdays. Nothing is wrong, I'm always
It's not a particularly good song though. Tracks 10 and 11 are just these really low, dull, slow, lousy, fucking swampy songs. It hits a total bleh. I mean, Bone Driven, the 11th track they released as a single, I don't know what the fuck they were thinking. It's totally inexplicably tuneless. It's not a fucking single by any stretch of the imagination.
crowded out. All that's left inside
And then potentially the best track in the album is the last one, Distant Voices, which is actually alright. It still is actually alright. I was sort of like holding my breath, but it's quite melodic. It's definitely not trying too hard, and the vocals are just a little bit more relaxed.
Maybe you sleep well in your head. Bring on the night, let the cold moon burn instead.
The lyrics as well, and I didn't mind it. I mean, it's not a good album. It's not a good album. It was a very significant album in a movement, and I can see why grunge was declared dead after, but I don't think it's a be-all and end-all of the band, though. The album that came after it, actually, the proper album that came after it, had a couple of really well-written choruses and stuff like that in it.
Time, I wish I was safe from home. To find yourself in a foreign land.
And they're still better than Silverchair.
I think most of this album's interchangeable, right? It's 61 minutes long. I mean, for fuck's sake, lads.
Yeah.
Get a hold of yourself. Particularly the last half of it, you could swap the songs around and nobody'd even notice, you know. But it sounds good though. Production's pretty good on it.
I'm not sure about the Albini.
I don't think it works. I think it's too, I don't know,
sparse. Like too rattly or something like that. It doesn't have power. I think when they did, is it Golden State, the album that came out after it, it's a much thicker album, and Bush are a thick band. It's like, let's be honest, they're thick, grungy, stupid rock, and as much as they wanted to try and be a bit hipper, you know, fair enough guys, you've tried it, but I think it just doesn't work for me at all. Dave, you're a big fan.
Jesus. Do you know what though? You're right. It was the Science of Things that came after, and then it was Golden
Is that
State.
the one? Yeah.
And they suit having keyboard flourishes and electronica and just being a clearer, like much bigger studio rock band than they do being this shitty, dirgy, grungy rock band.
Yeah, Bush are the grungy too, and they should have stuck to that, I think.
Yeah. A bad record. Who's up next?
I guess that'll be me then.
Reverse.
So David very kindly got me A Grand Don't Come For Free by The Streets.
It was supposed to be so easy. Just take back the DVD, withdraw that extra money, tell Mum I wouldn't be back for tea, then grab my savings and hurry. So first to get the bill back.
Now
this is a pound store album if ever I saw one.
Oh yeah, I mean this. Yeah, I mean I wonder. I like the copy Dave got me doesn't actually have a booklet in it.
It's because Dave kept it.
I just made me wonder how much coke has been snorted off the case, the CD,
And a Vauxhall Corsa,
yeah. I'm pretty sure there's probably still trace amounts on it if I wanted to have a look. But this album's kind of interesting in some ways, right? It's Mike Skinner trying to do something a little bit more. Well, I say Mike Skinner, the Streets are a band. Mike Skinner's band, but they are a band. There's more than just him in it. I think a lot of people.
And this is their second record.
It's their second record. It's a concept album, and the concept is not particularly grandiose. It's a guy loses a grand, and it's just his life as he tries to get it back, and shit goes badly. It's like not a particularly big, involved, or dramatic story. It's a little snapshot of what life is probably like for a lot of people in South London,
South London.
Well, yeah, which is where he's from. You know.
See, you said it's the second album. We really need to just give some context and say that first album had a single on it called Has It Come to This?
Stations, Webb Henry with precision, a few herbs and a bit of Benson, but don't forget the Rizzler. Lean like the Tower of Pisa. These are Oasia, and this is a day in the life of a geezer. For this ain't a club track. Pull out your sack and sit back.
It was like his first release, I think, in 2002, which starts with the line, "This is a day in the life of a geezer."
Yeah, but like original Pirate material came out, and it is kind of recognised as a classic because it kind of changed English hip hop and it captured working class life in the early 2000s.
You can't do half, my crew laughs at your rhubarb and custard verses. You rain down curses, but I'm waving your hearses driving by. Streets riding high with the beats in the sky. All stare, eyes glazed, garage burned down, the fire raged for 40 days.
And it was kind of alongside grime. It was UK garage, it was two-step, and it was a really fucking interesting record. And to be honest, it stands the test of time because it told sort of interesting working class young narratives in a very poetic way. And then this is the follow-up. He has the money from that first record and he decides to do a concept album. But yeah, I mean, he doesn't do a concept album about fucking wizards. He does a concept album about going on holiday and getting pissed and breaking up with his girlfriend.
The vast amount of people that really like this album were also really disappointed by the recent football results in the Euro finals. It's so fucking English. It is so fucking English. I mean, I don't think we can give this a truly objective hearing as Scotsmen, because Mike is probably a lovely dude, but fucking that accent is like nails down a blackboard all the way through. You think you'll get used to it, and it's just like he says something else like sensitive bruv in it. You know, it's just it's just like fuck. Yeah. No, I had to tape all my cutlery drawers shut so I wouldn't ram them in my fucking ears. It's absolutely fucking punishing from start to finish. I fucking hate it, and I'm glad you didn't give it to me. It sounds like a rappy version of the JCB song.
Well, I'm rumbling in this JCB. I'm 5 years old, my dad's a giant sitting beside me, and the engine rattles my bum like berserk while we're singing Don't Forget You.
See, no, I knew you wouldn't like it, Chris, and it's basically his voice is love it or hate it. And I understand
it was
how
supposed to be so easy.
Like, I know that it is.
How can anyone like that?
Going to be annoying, but I really like that it exists, and I think it's a really interesting. I think the Streets and these first two records are really interesting bits of UK working class culture and art culture and the middle class art folk accepting working class culture and it, you know, being discussed, because I think it's historically significant. Like pre-2002, you know, it was EastEnders and that was what working class people were, and Coronation Street, and then Mike Skinner kind of came out and gave them a poetic voice, and albeit an annoying poetic voice, but he told stories, and I think this is a really interesting take on the banality of British working class life. I think
I think this is the music equivalent of that bit where Del Boy tries to lean in the bar and falls through the gap and only fools in the horses. So it's totemistic in British working class humour, but it doesn't need to be there.
I think it can be annoying and it's been copied and it's cliched now, but I think it was genuinely fresh at the time, and I think it's a genuinely interesting snapshot of tabloid Britain, of, you know, the time of, you know, Ibiza Uncovered and all this stuff.
Kevin and Perry Go Large.
It did it in a it didn't do it in a tabloidistic way. It did it in a I'm part of this.
Mm-hmm. Tabloidistic, another word for the unsung dictionary.
Yeah,
I think you know, when this came out in 2004, the hip hop that I was getting into was underground American hip hop. So this for me was the complete antithesis of that, even though it was very working class. It's on a major label, you know, it's getting massive singles on it, 2 massive singles on it, and I'm actually kind of glad I came back to it later. I can't say that I really enjoyed it, but I like the fact it exists. I like that. I like that the narrative is somewhat compelling, even if I do think that a lot of the rhymes can be quite stilted, just because he's obviously trying to shoehorn them in. It's quite basic in a lot of places, you know. It's
a lot more basic than the first record, and I think it suffers from that, because I genuinely think his lyricism in the first album was really interesting, and then in this he rhymes phone with phoned.
Yeah. And I think the band or the beats, even how much of it is the band, how much of it is beats, it's hard to say really. I think a lot of it is also quite basic, and you know, there was people in it, probably those people that were doing, you know, I guess, what was it, garage at the time, which is the huge thing, that were doing stuff that was a bit more verve than this, for lack of a better word. But there's some cool songs in it. I think Could Be Well In has got quite a compelling narrative. I really don't mind it so much. It's got a really decent hook. It was a single from the album.
Who's your special one? She said she was the worst pool player under the sun. The blokes go easy, so she always won.
I saw this thing on ITV the other week. Said that if she played with her hair, she's probably keen.
It's got a nice little sample of strings in it. Uses strings quite a lot in this record. He's called it a rap opera, which is quite a fucking ambitious claim at the best of times anyway, you know. And he's since gone on to try and do stuff that is more akin to films or, you know, that kind of stuff. Some stuff I don't think aged particularly well. Wouldn't have it any other way. It's got this kind of almost reggae chorus.
Watching the TV throughout.
I know I never tell her, but every single day, man, I'm always thinking loads about her. She's the best thing that ever happened to me, and I don't know what I do.
But when I started to find the voice getting to me, only 4 songs into the record. The simple production on that one really works in its favour. It's got that dingy working class vibe to it, which is pretty cool. Get Out of My House actually feels like gaslighting.
Be proper
You can listen to what I'm saying.
if you're not
Look,
back
just let
later
me have my
on
say.
your knees.
Look, come on, calm down. It wasn't all totally like that. You're overreacting just a bit. Maybe we can sit down and chat. It's just, you know, I had stuff to do. You know?
Yeah, I know. He sort of, oh, this is happening in real time. He's turned the narrative around there. Oh, right, I'm not sure about this. I guess that's just, it's literally how relationships worked.
Yeah.
Then.
Fit But You Know It was a huge single for him, right? It's a pretty fun song as it goes as well. It's
Bit too much fake tan, no, but yeah, you score high. But there's just one little thing that's really annoying me about you, you see. Yeah, like I said, you are really fit. But my gosh, don't you just know it? I'm not trying.
It's got total crossover appeal. It's basically an indie song with rapping on it.
Yeah, it's like, you know, Jamie T or something like that.
Yeah,
like, opened the world up for that.
The protagonist is clearly an arsehole. It's quite apparent at this point in the narrative of the record. But it's catchy as fuck. And it's like when people liked Blur, right? And they liked Park Life and they thought, oh, yes, it's great, it's pure about lad culture. Then Blur were obviously so much more. The streets are actually so much more. There's a lot of commentary going on this album. But people fucking love Fit But You Know It because it's like, oh, yeah, lads, yeah, innit? And yeah, I suppose that's...
Yeah, it's like Al Murray, the pub landlord. It's loved by people that don't get the joke.
Totally. And then what is he thinking is kind of sinister. There's some cool orchestral flourishes in the background.
All fits into place suddenly. Yeah, the coat was hanging up under my stairs, but one day it went, leaving the cupboard bare. The facts all clicking and become square. He stole it while I was unaware. But why's he denying it when it's so bait?
There's a guy called Wayne G on it who's just fucking dreadful though. He's got some of the worst rhymes I've ever heard in my entire life, and he's right on the beat as well. He doesn't even do anything interesting vocally. He's just rapping on the beat. It's like, mate, no. Dry Your Eyes, mate, is Dry Your Eyes. See, it's not even called Dry Your Eyes, mate. It's just called Dry Your Eyes.
Her eyes glaze over like she's looking straight through me. Then her eyes must have closed for what seems an eternity. When they open up, she's looking down at her feet.
Dry your eyes, mate. I know it's hard to take, but her mind has been made up.
Dry Your Eyes is, I think, single-handedly responsible for the entire musical existence of Ed Sheeran. It's an acoustic song with rapping, which is basically Ed Sheeran.
Yeah, no, you're probably right. It's like that acoustic grime. But hey, it's a guy getting in touch with his feelings.
You know, like the strings are really good. I like the acoustic guitar on it. The beat's really low key. I can see.
In terms of a breakup song, it's, you know.
Yeah, I think it's probably a lyrical high point in the album, this song.
And it's actually introspective.
Yeah, and Empty Can just kind of got a really cool idea behind it, right? It's the same song, but with same ending, 2 different endings, but in one song. And you get the dark ending where he
punches the TV engineer.
Shouting stuff to me, slamming his door, shouting to me. So here I am in my house, drinking on my own settee. Everyone's a cunt in this life, no one's there for me. No one gives a crap about Mike, that's why I'm acting nasty.
Because he steals his grand from behind his TV, which he didn't know was there. Or you have the other one where his pal comes in and helps him fix the TV, and that the second part of it has got more of an Eminem feel almost to it, which is quite interesting.
Did not want to end, beginning of hard times to come, but something that was not
same song, different keys, the major and minor keys. It's pretty cool. It's a cool contrast.
I will say, I thought that the drum and the bass pattern on Not Addicted was pretty good. Pretty dope. How about that? How's that?
And it foresaw the gambling addiction of UK culture 15 years ahead of time. So.
Yeah.
Man, I really like the Streets' first two records. I think the first one's genuinely fucking great. I think this one's interesting. I can only take so much of his voice, but very interesting.
I do think it's interesting. I think he's an interesting guy as well. And the Streets have just come back, I think, after being away.
He keeps going away and coming back. So I've kind of lost touch. So we should move on to then my choice, which was this from you, Mark?
Yeah.
So another British rapper on the same record label, and this is only 6 years later. This is Plan B with the Defamation of Strickland Banks.
I can never say no, baby. I can only show you how my love goes down. My love.
Which is another concept album with a fictional character played by Plan B.
Can I go into a little bit of thinking as to why I picked this one for you, Dave?
Yeah, please do.
So I picked, what was that I picked before for Chris? I picked Top Loader, right?
Yeah.
And you fucking hated it. And I thought, what can I give to Dave that he's also probably going to hate and would make for good banter? And I thought, it's going to have to be Plan B. It's the first thing I seen.
I don't think I'd heard Plan B, and I think like his first record was genuinely a kind of rap album, but it, there was acoustic songs and stuff like that, but it had proper rap stuff on it.
And I'm out to notch up as many points as possible. Showing the kids on my state that I'm unstoppable. Cause in my world, respect's the only thing that matters. Fight getting enough, someone weak enough for me to beat is getting battered. His self-esteem's getting shattered into tiny little fragments and the floor is scattered.
The title of his first record came from a Meat Puppet song, so I was like,
is that true?
Yeah.
Wow. What was the first record called?
Who Needs Actions When You Got Words? It's a line from Plateau.
Well, I guess it might be the Nirvana cover that he's getting it from, but
yeah, that's true.
He seems to be quite a talented dude who's got a really good knowledge of music, which is quite interesting.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm going to have a very strange take on this album, I think.
Oh my god. Well,
I mean, get out the road if you want.
I thought this was going to be grime or something interesting, and it turns out to be the most fucking turgid neo-soul white people in London taking Motown pish I've ever heard in my life. It's just like guys called Chad getting in the friends to play drums on this song that, fuck off. I think I maybe got it mixed up with Professor Green, because I at least thought Professor Green sings about getting stabbed in that. This is just fucking appalling. In the 80s and 90s we had Simply Red, who at least wrote good songs with their terrible MOR, but this is just shit. It's like so far removed from what I want music to be. It's just background music to a fucking bank advert bullshit. Like all the songs just merge into one for me. There's like some upbeat white funky soul, there's some downbeat white funky soul, there's one with some rapping on it, and at least some interesting percussion. I think that's on Darkest Place. But no, I was just listening to this and I was like, this is what is wrong with Britain. This is DFS on a Sunday. This is fucking like maxed out my credit card at Burton. Oh, nah, pish. Fucking hate it. Burn it with fire.
Mark, you got exactly what you wanted.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think my work here is done.
Right.
You had like genuinely talented folk like Amy Winehouse and stuff, and then it got put into the commercial radio factory, but it still had some sort of soul, and it did link back to like good soul artists. But this is not good soul. This is
Plan B, I actually have avoided this guy completely, and I didn't really know what to expect. Maybe it is a Professor Green thing. I sort of thought some kind of rappy, shitty British hip hop pop light stuff, and I've not heard the early stuff at all. I know that the guy has a fairly diverse taste in music, so I've seen him doing the covers of stuff that was like quite unusual, and he clearly likes Nirvana and things like that, which is why I think he maybe got that quote from the Unplugged album. But I agree with Mark. I think this is a guy with a fairly broad knowledge and taste in music. I don't really know how much he's got to do with the writing of his stuff.
He wrote it all.
But he wrote it all.
All of it, yeah.
What I hear in this is like a white guy. I hear like the Motown Eminem, basically. A white guy trying to do a traditionally black genre. He seems to have a very sincere love of Motown to me. Listening to it, I'm being totally objective. I had no dog in the fight here. He seems to really be quite into it. He attempts to contemporise it a wee bit with some of the rappy stuff, and I actually think that's the low point.
I got my peeps them with me, shout and pull up the socks, cause we just broke the law and now we're running from cops. I got my lip boss fighting, now there's blood on my top, and I'm still out looking for a party.
Just maybe that's just a reflection of my personal tastes. I actually think that with stuff like the track Writings on the Wall, I think the writing on that tune's for a Motown track is pretty decent. I could imagine it in the hands of somebody that was actually a really good singer, like maybe like CeeLo Green or something like that. If somebody with a really powerful delivery had performed that, it wasn't, as you say, so white. I do agree, it's totally, it really smacks of like a white guy trying hard to get the nod from the kingmakers in that scene. The more I don't need to see him, the more I actually can tolerate it. The more I didn't, I watched a couple of the videos and it was horrendous. Like, I couldn't fucking deal with it. But the more I was just like walking about listening to it, I was like, this is totally inoffensive. I mean, it's Audi music. It is absolutely fucking boring executive banker music, of course. But I'm just trying to look at his motivations for doing it. And I feel like he's pretty kind of honest about it. There was no real reason for him to change his career in this direction. He just seems to have wanted to. What I will say is that Love Goes Down is a single. That's got DCI Kate Fleming, what's her name, Vicky McClure, the actress, in the video for that. And I was like, Love Goes Down, is this a reference to him losing his erection? I couldn't work it out. Poor lad. Maybe he saw the season 6 finale of Line of Duty. I don't know. I think it's okay. It's absolutely okay. I expected to get far more annoyed by many of the albums that we've done in this than I actually was. Yeah.
So, but the story goes that he had 2 albums. They wanted to do this one and a hip hop one, which were 2 parts of the same story. And his label were like, you need to do one or the other, and they decided he was going to do the soul one next. Apparently came up with the song Love Goes Down, the one you're talking about, where he was supporting the Roots in America, which makes sense, because they can actually do it both. They can actually do both those things in the one song. They can do soul and hip hop in the one song. He doesn't really get as good as them ever. It's fine. This album's fine. It's pure Audi music. You're right. There's no other way of putting it. I don't mind the rapping and stay too long. I think he's pretty decent at rapping actually, as things go. Although he does sound a bit more annoying than Mike Skinner sometimes. She said it was a massive hit. This album had 7 singles off it. It's
like thriller level singles.
Sold 1.4 million copies. It was a really big hit in the 2010. It's quite a big hit. I don't know that much to say about it. The pseudo soul, I guess neo soul vibe, it just feels like it's trying too hard to me. his voice is too weak to really carry a lot of these ideas through to completion. I think it apes a lot of the time. It's kind of going for the big 60s grandiose production, and it never gets it. It never quite gets it.
It's too slick.
Yeah.
It doesn't have the brassy, overdriven analog tape feel of classic Motown. It doesn't have that crispy edge.
Yeah, I think what I'm offended most is not like the quality of the songs, which are fine, or the quality of the musicianship, which is strong, but it's just the fact that it's just trying to be something that has been perfected so much by so many incredible artists, and then he's just some white lad from London, and there's just a bunch of white label execs going, yeah, let's fucking get that fucking great soul record out by Plan B. No, it's like the inauthenticity of it.
It must be interesting though, right? Mark's unburdened a pound store of this album, and this album is one of the archetypal pound store albums. I mean, the thing is, over time, via the natural process of like sedimentation, eventually all pound stores will be populated by maybe 5 or 6 albums, because all the rest will have been filtered out and these will all have just accumulated there. And Mark's broken that cycle, and I can only imagine the expression on the cashier's face.
You know, after this he went away and made a film called Ill Manners, which he wrote and directed, and it actually stars Riz Ahmed.
Is it any good?
There's actually no reviews of it in Wikipedia.
That's not a good sign.
It opened with a good gross. No, apparently it's got 80% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. Holy fuck. Okay, maybe it is actually alright. Did the soundtrack album for it as well, obviously. So
maybe Riz is doing a lot of the heavy lifting there, but maybe not. Maybe we're being unfair. I mean, like I said, I don't think it's so bad.
Well,
shite. But thanks.
I just need to wonder what I'm going to get next.
Oh yeah. There's a new batch here for you.
Cool.
Aye, buzzing. And then we'll go and empty out some more pound stores, just for you guys.
Yes.
Keeping the economy afloat. That's what we're doing for this podcast. Cycling it back out to the workers, the man in the street.
Well, thanks very much. I did have fun. It was enjoyable.
Thanks. I'm sorry for making you angry, Dave.
We'll have more bonus content in the...
It's not
I'm
the
going to go
face
listen
of
to
a...
Crash Test Dummies to just relax.
That's not the face of a man that was actually sorry, by the way. Catch you later.
Alright, cheerio.
Bye.